Chair, before I go any further, I wish to extend an apology for the Honorable Minister of Education, Premani Chand, who could not be here today because of an emergency she's attending to right now. Mr. Chairman, Francis Fonseca, Assistant Secretary General CARICOM, Ms. Alison Drayton, other ministers from around the Caribbean, prominent secretaries, Program Manager, CARICOM, Human Resource Development, Dr. Lorette Bristol, senior officials of the various ministries of education, development partners, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to welcome you on behalf of the Honorable Minister of Education, Premani Chand, and the Government of Guyana to the 44th meeting of the Council for Human and Social Development here in Georgetown, Guyana. Mr. Chairman, the significance of the role of COSAD cannot be overemphasized, since it is well positioned to advance and to support the implementation of policies and programs that are pivotal to the transformation of the education sectors across the region. The theme chosen for the meeting this year, Education as and for Resilience, is most appropriate and serves as a timely reminder of our mettle as a people and how we need to respond in dealing with adversity. Undoubtedly, Chair, many of our member states emerged from a pandemic stronger and better, and Guyana is no exception. Very early, we discerned the possible negative consequences of the pandemic on our people's social and economic advancement. In the initial stage, under the vibrant leadership of the Honorable Minister Manichan, we prepared curriculum-aligned worksheets by grade level for mass distribution. The distance education mode was activated through our television learning channel and radio as we delivered educational content over the airwaves. Subsequently, we made all produced and licensed resources available via our website and social media spaces, worksheets, study packages, textbooks, and other helpful content-specific links to photos, audio files, videos, recorded lessons, and the like to our students. With the aid of international and local experts, consolidated curricula were developed that facilitated the coverage of developmentally appropriate grade level expectations in a compressed timeline. Chair, there is no shortcut to the road to success. I sense there is a keenness in executing the elements of Sustainable Development Goal 4, which addresses issues of access, quality, equity, inclusivity, and lifelong learning. Against this background, we in Guyana find great interest in the agenda items as we attempt to close the existing gaps in the education sector. As we attempt to do so, evidence-based instruction, linking school and home, personalized learning, professional development, and improving governance and accountability of the education system must be brought sharply into focus. As we move forward, we must do so with the greatest degree of alacrity and the commitment to serve our young people, who are the foundation of a bright and a prosperous Caribbean. Margaret Mead espoused, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. The group to change the Caribbean, I believe, is in this room. Chair, upon the conclusion of this 44th COSARD meeting, we eagerly look forward to entertaining this august body in the true spirit of the Guyanese culture. Once again, I welcome you to this meeting and to our beautiful land, and may God bless us all.
Thank you very much, CEO. Honorable Francis Fonseca, Minister of Education, Culture, Science and Technology, Belize and incoming Chair of COSARD. Honorable Kay McConey, Minister of Education, Technology and Vocational Training, Barbados, the outgoing Chair of COSARD. Dr. Marcel Hudson, Chief Education Officer, Ministry of Education, Guyana, or host for the 44th meeting of COSARD. Other honorable ministers of education from across the Caribbean community, representatives from regional institutions, international development partners, and other specially invited observers, staff and officials from the ministries of education. It is my pleasure and privilege to welcome you to this 44th meeting of COSARD Education. This is our first regular meeting since the global declaration of the COVID-19 pandemic in March 2020, and it is happening at a time when we are already seeing setbacks due to the impacts of the crisis on the education sector. I am heartened by our commitment to identifying solutions to respond to this crisis and anticipate strong and tangible outcomes of our discussions, including recommendations to strengthen our regional approaches and strategies. The three special meetings of COSARD Education convened in 2020 and 2021 focused on concerns related to arrangements for the administration of regional examinations and the accommodations to be made to support smooth transitions from secondary education into tertiary education and work, given delays in the matriculation processes. Education actors were called to form new partnerships, ones that privileged social dialogue and networking with parents, communities, and the private sector. The school and the activities of teaching were virtually extended into the home, and the connections between education, the economy, and society created urgencies around the need for pragmatic solutions to address safe returns to school and work. Let me applaud all of you for the incredible work you carried out in these challenging times. Today we are coming together at a point when the daily media briefs and status updates are no longer common. Yet we know that we continue to live with COVID-19, as we have not completely done away with masks, and we are still urging those not yet vaccinated to get vaccinated. I will not take the time I have here to remind of the impact of the pandemic on our education systems. The papers that were shared will highlight not only the impact, but the cost in learning and the areas for redress to ensure that 1, we do not lose the gains that were being made pre-COVID, and 2, we work to overcome the inherent concerns for learning poverty that preoccupied us pre-COVID-19. I want instead, Honourable Ministers, to focus on what is at stake if we do not attend to the lessons learned. Access to quality lifelong learning is a concern for SDG 4, and even more cogently for us as a region if we are to achieve the full implementation of the CARICOM Human Resource Development 2030 strategy. We are 1/5 of the way into the decade for action and 8 years away from 2030. Yet, we know that we are a long way away from the development targets that we have set for ourselves regionally. We must leave this meeting with a new definition for quality education, a comprehensive understanding of what must be done differently, and a clear articulation of the immediate actions necessary to change how schools re-engage with learners and communities. In our commitment to act collectively, resilience and agility in education delivery, the theme that guides the thinking for our meeting requires that we make fundamental paradigm shifts in how we speak of the purpose of education for human capital development, in how we resource education, and how we reprioritize strategies within the CHRD 2030 strategy for accelerated implementation. Education reform must become our regional recovery, adaptation, and resilience strategy. And I think that we have a lot to build on. We've already heard from Diana on some of the initiatives they took. We're going to have what I think is going to be one of the most interesting presentations of this meeting from Belize later on how they have been reimagining education. And I think there's a lot that we can take away and look at both in terms of how we move as a region and at the national level. Let me share some rather depressing statistics with you. Globally, it is projected that students in grades 1 to 12 affected by school closures, which is pretty much all of our children, will earn 3% lower income over their lifetime. Whereas for every additional year that a child stays in school, they have the potential to earn a 10% increase in income. Let us do the math. Our attention needs to be on strengthening the internal efficiencies of our education systems to enhance completion and survival rates and learning outcomes for all learners, despite gender, socioeconomic class, race, or geography. This means changing the ways we monitor, quality assure, govern, and finance early childhood education, teacher recruitment, preparation, and leadership development, and curriculum diversification reform for skills development. These contribute to smooth transitions between school and work and promote students' potential for employability. We need a more open education system built on democratic, evidence-based principles to accelerate inclusion. Honourable Ministers, these are among the many issues that will be brought before you over the next 2 days. Our vulnerability as small island developing states, where the vagaries of climate change and disasters shift our economic outlook and refocus our educational allocations, requires us to redesign flexible learning environments which promote and accelerate the adoption of digital skills. Honourable Ministers, we are now called to make the shifts from being digital consumers of technology to being digital producers. This digital skill set and the entrepreneurial focus is required of teachers and students across the education sector. As we go forward, let us keep in mind the guidance from Sir Arthur Lewis that knowledge, which should be acquired through a seamless education system with multiple pathways, is the only cure for poverty. With the horizon of the fifth industrial revolution ahead of us, we must position our children and youth to capitalize upon the 70% of the new value which the World Economic Forum suggests will be created in the economy over the next decade, but which will be based on digitally enabled models. As I end, I remind us of the mandates of the COSOD as articulated in Article 17 of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, namely to promote the development of education through the efficient organization of educational and training facilities in the community, including elementary and advanced vocational training and technical facilities. Unleashing the potential of our Caribbean community requires of all education actors innovative perspectives for human capital development, different ways of connecting the activities of formal, informal, and non-formal education, and collaborating with other sectors to create and integrate novel state incentives to retain a quality workforce. I just want to pause and emphasize the importance of that. Every one of us, I think, has experienced the loss of this important cadre of educators out of our countries. And given what we read is happening in North America as teachers burn out, I think we can all anticipate that there is going to be a great push again to recruit from our countries if we do not collectively come up with ways to retain this capacity, we are going to lose what we cannot afford to lose. Ministers, representatives from among our development partners, and colleagues, I thank you for taking the time to join us with us over the next 2 days to bolster the pathways for accelerated growth in the region through human capital development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ASG. A pleasant good morning to those of you joining us here in Guyana, and of course those joining us online. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to join you here in Guyana for this 44th meeting of COSOD, and to chair these proceedings, which I hope and expect will yield positive results and outcomes for our CARICOM education community. Allow me to thank the CARICOM Secretariat, ASG Drayton, and Dr. Bristol in particular for their warm welcome and for the tremendous work that they have done to organize and facilitate this 44th meeting of COSOD. I also wish to place on record our gratitude to the outgoing chair, the Minister of Education, Technology and Vocational Training for Barbados, the Honorable Kay McConney, who is here with us in Guyana. Thank you, Minister, for your leadership during very difficult and challenging times. During Barbados's time in the chair, we were still managing the ravages of COVID-19, of course, on educational delivery in two key areas, determining the administration of regional assessment and addressing learning recovery and enhancement. During that time, we also were able to celebrate recent regional achievements, particularly around the launch of the capacity building program to support the implementation of the CDB CARICOM OECS Let's Reap for Caribbean schools, an update on which we will hear about later in this meeting. My friends, we meet today after 2 years of the most challenging, after 2 of the most challenging years in our education systems. For us in CARICOM, and certainly it was our experience in Belize, it has been 2 years of lost learning, 2 years of sacrifice and hardship, 2 years of uncertainty, 2 years in which access, quality, inclusion, and equity were all limited, and some hard-fought gains were reversed. The magnitude of this crisis, in my view, cannot be overstated. This requires a response that is grounded in a strong sense of purpose and urgency. In my view, this is a time and opportunity for bold, transformative change based on meaningful, comprehensive engagement, consultations with our education community stakeholders. The 44th meeting, of course, as we have said, is convened at a very difficult moment for education delivery. It is the first meeting for 2022 and the first face-to-face meeting since the COVID-19 pandemic. It is also being convened, as Dr. Bristol has reminded me, 8 days after global celebration of World Teachers' Day, under the theme, "The Transformation of Education Begins with Teachers." As Assistant Secretary General reminded us, COSOD is the organ responsible for the promotion of human and social development in the community, and as such is charged with the responsibility of accelerating development of human capital development through the efficient organization of education training facilities in the community, including elementary and advanced vocational training and technical facilities. This meeting will therefore address urgent matters impacting the progress of the implementation of the CARICOM Human Resources Development 2030 strategy in the region. The meeting is convened under the theme Education as and for Resilience. Through its deliberations, the meeting of Ministers of Education is called to re-examine the role of Ministries of Education in creating and sustaining the conditions needed for schools, principals, and teachers to serve as the essential service actors in a system where every child should realize their full potential. And B, to articulate the practical means through which regional, systemic, and local actions can be refocused to ensure that gaps in the learning trajectory created by school closures will be addressed, and in the process mitigate against reductions in national productivity and individual earning power over the next 3 to 5 years. A fundamental hope for the outcomes of the meeting is a commitment to quality education delivery as a key strategy for adaptation and recovery. This requires reprioritization of the implementation of the CARICOM HRD 2030 strategy, given the ongoing demands for education system resilience and agility to respond to the provision of equitable access to education in times of crisis to drive the social and economic well-being of our societies. Finally, I want to share with you some thoughts expressed in a book given to me by a friend who was visiting Belize from Japan a few weeks ago and gifted me with this book. It's a book called Lessons Learned: How Good Policies Produce Better Schools. And I want to share very quickly with you two very brief paragraphs from that book. It says, why education matters and how to improve it. 23 centuries ago, Aristotle wrote that the fate of empires rests of the education of youth. In the modern world, more than ever before, education determines the fate of individuals and societies. How much people will earn, how happy they will be, how fast economies will grow, and how many people will be left behind. Governments spend large and increasing amounts of money on education, and most engage in continuous and wide-ranging reforms. Yet, few of those reforms have had the impact their designers hoped for, and in many school systems, there has been little improvement in student outcomes for decades. In most countries, large numbers of students fail to reach even the most basic levels of proficiency. However, a small number of school systems do deliver consistently good schooling, do ensure that every child reaches a good standard of achievement, and do improve over time. More importantly, we know a lot about how they do it. There's a set of schools and school systems which collectively demonstrate what can be done to improve school performance. There are lessons from the business sector which can be applied in education, and there are growing amounts of quantitative evidence from national and international assessments which can be used to identify the approaches which work and those which do not. Out of that evidence, 7 lessons have emerged for improving performance in school systems. Have Fewer but better teachers. The unions won't like to hear that. Have fewer but better teachers. Get the right people to become teachers. Ensure that every school has effective leadership. Set high standards and measure whether they are achieved. Create structures which empower people, hold them accountable, and encourage collaboration. Invest in building teachers' professional knowledge and skills. And finally, continuously challenge inequity in educational performance. My friends, I welcome the opportunity for us over the next 2 days to have a very robust discussion on the challenges we are facing, and most importantly, to put our hearts and minds together to create and craft solutions to these very, very serious challenges. So I look forward with great anticipation to the discussions over the next 2 days. I thank you.